and welcome to Mirador Television. We are the biggest little TV in the world, based in Lewes, East Sussex in England. Our aim is to entertain and to spice things up a little. We will also keep an eye on the local politics, because let's face it, someone has to. Our programs range from stories about the local people to stories about people from all the way across the pond. Brought to you by our wonderful colleagues in New York. So why not sit back, relax with your favourite cuppa, or maybe your favourite tipple, and enjoy. This is Mirador Television.
And a very good morning to you. Here we are. As you can see, I welcome the news that the barbers are going to be open pretty soon. We don't know where in here, but I'm almost ready to walk to Wales, where they will be. And I'm sure there are many, many people that are feeling the same way. And it's nice to have somebody sort of tamper with your hair and so on and so forth, make sure you're smart, because if I start off with the choppers myself, God only knows what might happen. Anyway, let's have a look at what's going on today. And why not start with the weather, because it's rather nice outside. My tree is almost static, so yes, the breeze is gentle. So what's going on with the weather?
When you see me with an umbrella, it's raining.
Well, here we are. It is Wednesday morning and a rather pleasant day outside if you want to venture out early this morning. As usual, we've got conflict in the news. And actually, as one of my mentors many, many years ago said, Keith, there is no story without conflict. And that's why when people say, oh, the news is all bad, yeah, it is. Because actually, nobody is interested in good news. If I get home on safely tonight, I was going to say on the bus, I don't go home on the bus. If I get home safely tonight, nobody wants to know. If I break my neck, then everybody wants to cheer. So I'm sorry, but we just reflect what society wants, and there is no such thing really as good news unless you had so much bad news that something comes to brighten your day, which normally you wouldn't pay any attention to. So first of all, the AstraZeneca jab situation motors on. The Europeans keep on saying, blood clots and so on and so forth. Even their own scientists say, no evidence. Our scientists say, absolutely no evidence. And Matt Hancock, who hasn't always distinguished himself when telling us news about COVID, also says, stop worrying. Now, for those who may worry, may I say that there are many people who would like to see me anywhere other than where I am. I had the AstraZeneca shot jab, and so far, I had it some weeks ago. I was one of the first because I'm over 35 and I've got a limp. I was in the at-risk category, so I was very early in the queue, and I have had no problems at all. none. Even the day after, I felt a little bit of lack of ambition, shall we say. I didn't want to do a great deal, and I had a mild headache when I woke in the morning, but that was all. There was no ill effects whatsoever, and I haven't had any. So, if the Europeans, and I'm sorry to say that because many Brits consider themselves Europeans, and why not? You don't have to have that demarcation just because we've left the European Union. That's quite a different thing. But many of the EU medical people, no, not medical, politicians have whipped up a storm about the AstraZeneca jab, and some people are suggesting that it is a political kickback because AstraZeneca didn't play ball with them in the first instance and sharing the vaccine, but went to the first customer, who happened to be us. There's nothing wrong with that. Good private enterprise. Then don't try to tell some of the people in Brussels that. But it's fine. I'm giving you not the opinion, a medical opinion or a political opinion. All I'm saying is I've had it, and I'm still here, and I've had no ill effects whatsoever. The only ill effect that I've had from since I had the jab is the lack of a pub to go to, and hopefully, if we're lucky, next month we're going to have a pub to go to. Oh, how wonderful! Can't wait. Yes, well. Actually, that's the thing, is the muscles go when you're not using them. 2 hands this time with a tankard. So AstraZeneca, I personally wouldn't worry about it, and I think millions of us aren't worried about it. And it's become a political football, and how politicians manage to get these things, which seem so straightforward, into political footballs, I'll never know. But they are a weird lot. Anybody in politics is absolutely as weird as you can make out. And I've got friends in politics. They wouldn't mind me saying that they're weird because they're quite proud of the fact that they're weird. I'm weird, but I'm not a politician, and I don't intend ever to be one. Believe me. Believe me. So don't worry, I'm not going to be on the hustings next election. Oh, let's have a. Oh, that's the trouble when you haven't got hair to protect yourself from your hat. Now, the other row that keeps bubbling on is the question of the royal family and Meghan. And now there is a fury at a breach of trust as a pal leaks stuff to make talks unproductive. And I think the Queen had said to Harry, "Come on, son, you're my grandson. Come on, sit where you used to. Sit at the foot of this chair, and let's have a little chat the way that we used to, and see what the hell's bothering you." And it would seem that Meghan or Meghan's group aren't satisfied with that. That they want to upset having a little chats, and that things should die down. Actually, if you're self-serving, as a lot of these people are, and when I say a lot of these people, it's easy to say a lot of these people. Who do you mean? Well, I have had friends who have been Hollywood stars. I've had friends who've been not so high up in the Hollywood hierarchy, but nonetheless reasonably entrenched there, so they know how it goes. And if there is one area in this world that is me, is Hollywood. And if there is one area in this world where great amounts of money are spent to try and make people look as if they are from next door, and you would love to have them as next door neighbor, it's Hollywood. I mean, it turns out a wonderful product, many wonderful products. It turns out wonderful actors, but that's what they are, and we forget that. They're actors. And actors, I worked in the theatre for a year, so I came face to face with them. And actually, strangely enough, it was a theatre in North America, so a good many stars came up to act, which some of them do. Many of them come up and actually take to the stage. So it's one of those areas that you know a little bit about because you've rubbed cheek and jowl with these people, and they're superb actors, but some of them can't turn off acting. And the other half can't turn off being a sensation seekers. So I'm not taking any sides in this royal row because I think this is a stupid row. It should never have blown up in the first place. And probably the rest of us are stupid to pay any attention to it, because I'm much more interested in the Queen as being a head of state. And she is an excellent head of state. And in my view, and in the view of many other people, though this is open to debate, is a constitutional monarchy is the best form of government you could get. So I'm interested in the Queen as head of state and head of a constitutional monarchy. What her family get up to is up to them. They are far more self-important than they should be, and that's the case with. I mean, if they wanted to disappear, if Harry wanted to disappear into the wilds of British Columbia and then down to Hollywood and do it because he's not very happy with the life, he could have done it. As it is, what we've got is poncing in front of the cameras all over the place. He said this, she said that. I mean, it's just nonsense, isn't it? It's absolute nonsense. Is that bad news? I'm not sure. One of the things that is slightly alarming, because I think that mentally we are all now geared to the fact that lockdown is going to end. That we have, to all intents and purposes, beaten the virus, or at least put it into retreat, so that we can go back to some sort of normality. It won't be normality. Our lives will be different. Undoubtedly, our lives will be different in very significant ways. But at least we will go back to being having a free life. We can go through the front door. We can go to the pub. We can have a haircut. We can stop in the street and chat to people. I mean, that's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because at the moment, if you meet somebody, you have to circle around them. It all looks as if you're being impolite, didn't want to meet him or her. But in fact, what you're doing is keeping a social distance. I wonder if we will be able to get over that. I lived and worked in Northern Ireland for a long time, right throughout the period of the Troubles. And when you went into a store or when you went into a secure area, you would automatically put your hands up like that because the security people would pat you down. So when I came back to Britain and I went into a store, I put my hands up and they all looked at me as if I was mad because I did it as a matter of course. And I wonder whether, in fact, we will actually circle each other the way that we are at the moment in the street, even when we don't have to. It'll be very interesting to see what comes. But the alarming thing is, at the moment, is that a new variant. And this time it's come from the Philippines. So now at least we know what we're looking for, which we didn't a year ago. I've got a little bit of stuff on my spectacles. Let's see if we can get rid of it because it makes me look like one-eyed Jacks. There we go. Incidentally, one of the interesting things is about the sort of program that we do is we don't know whether we're being politically correct or not. And it doesn't really matter because of all the people that work with me, and I myself have no isms whatsoever. I don't really care. The only thing that bothers me is the way that the English language is tortured by some people who want to express their strange views. Don't damage the English language. It's a beautiful language. As I think it was Hugh Grant in Love Actually? Yes, Love Actually. Hugh Grant says it is the land of Shakespeare and David Beckham's right foot and David Beckham's left foot, if it comes to that. Is brilliant script writers, but it is. English is beautiful, and it bothers me every time that I see the English language tortured. I have friends who entertained to dinner just before lockdown. People that they'd known all their lives, and they said that their children had sent them to Coventry because they continue to use the word feisty. Now, normally, I agree that if you say feisty, you think in terms of a female, but it's not exclusive. I can be feisty, you can be feisty. It is a good word to describe people who are energetic and have a good go and are springing around and so on, as opposed to docile. But apparently, there is a certain group of people who have decided, and they're telling the rest of us, that feisty is a word we must not use because it's sexist. Oh, give me strength. Where do these people come from? It is a good English word. Yes, the meaning of words change. I can remember once when I was quite young, I was 13 or 14, and I was lucky because I had friends who had very intelligent and aware parents, and we would discuss words, and they had a dictionary from 18 something or other, and the word bosom came up, which still means to some extent his boobs, if you like. But the word bosom initially meant homely or plain, and somebody who would be close to home and not want to rove, and that's what that was the original meaning of it. And I don't even know whether that was the original meaning of it. It became in the 1800s became the meaning, and now of course it means something totally different. And that's fine if it actually develops. But to suddenly decide that the word feisty is sexist, how damn silly. Well, I didn't suddenly decide. This was about 6 months or so ago. Well, it would have been longer than that. I've forgotten just how long lockdown has been. But anyway, feisty. And I'm going to say it, and I'm going to say it again, feisty. And there's nothing sexist in that from me at all. In fact, let me boast a little bit. Let me boast a little bit, because now somebody will say, oh, that's reverse discrimination, Keith. I was in Kosovo for 2.5 years, trying hard to make a new free press understand that they couldn't go around just saying anything they liked, that freedom of the media came with responsibility. And I made some good friends there, and we started to get through. But during that period of being in Kosovo, I had a staff which actually grew slightly, so I'm guilty of that. But when I left, there were 20 people. And of those 20, 17 were ladies. And why were the 17 ladies? Because they were there on merit. They could do the work. The men couldn't, or at least the men candidates weren't as good. And the remarkable thing is that Kosovo, and to some extent still suffers from it, is a male-dominated society. It is the men get the jobs, the men go to work. There are lots of bright ladies, don't misunderstand. But generally speaking, it was a male-dominated society. So that 17 ladies should be there working in this office and doing responsible jobs. They weren't just secretaries or cleaners or whatever. No, my media law advisor was a lady. And in fact, so good that she was invited over to London to speak to a group here to talk about rule of law and so on, as it was in Kosovo. And so that I was really very proud of that. So when I say feisty, if you really want to have a go at me for being sexist, have a go, because I think you're just torturing the English language. You're absolute rubbish. And go and is a Canadian friend of mine who used to hear this is a story against Canadians, who used to say, oh, we had a shortage of sugar during the war, and he had actually been a pilot. And eventually he couldn't, so he said, oh, go and get some flack up your ass. That was how he felt about things, and I feel the same. I don't want to hear people saying that I'm sexist or I'm this or ism or that ism because of words that I use, which I've been used to using all my life and which I find beautiful and descriptive. So get off my back on that. Or if you want to get on my back, you'll have a fight. How do we get onto this? Well, that was because I was talking about the royal row, but also we were getting onto the fact that there's a new COVID variant from the Philippines. And the other disturbing thing, the story in the headlines this morning, is that in an RAF unit, that there were sexual abuses, male on male, as a sort of an initiation game. Now, we've heard about these things from time to time in the armed forces, and the armed forces say that they eradicate them and they get rid of them. And undoubtedly, they try very hard, because that sort of abuse is not only unacceptable, but also who's going to join the Army, Navy, or Air Force if they think that they're going to have initiation ceremonies like that? I most certainly wouldn't. There's a lot of hassle at the moment about the fact that these sort of things happen. And as one young man who has said, "Hey, this is what happened to me." Well, you saw what we had this morning. Let me just play it again for a moment because I'm going to talk about it in a minute.
Oh, when you see me with an umbrella, it's raining.
Well, there we are. There we are. Yes, because apparently we are going to have a big chill coming up to Easter. We have sub-zero temperatures. They haven't been great recently, but as you can see this morning, we're actually getting quite balmy when it reaches the high, and it is sunny at the moment outside. If you haven't been out yet this morning, because it is only 7:52, and I've talked to a lot of people throughout the lockdown, and they say, "Oh, we don't get up until 8 o'clock, and even open our eyes till 8 o'clock." So they don't see what what the morning is like here. And by the time they get up and out, it's cloudy. But we're going to have sub-zero temperatures until Easter, and we could have a return of snow. Perhaps not in our part of the country where we're speaking from, and that's Lewis in East Sussex. But we are going to get some around and about over the country. And so that's is it good news or bad news? Probably bad news, because we always think of Easter as Easter bonnets, a time of regeneration, a time when people start to get happy again. Although there's the old saying, "Ne'er cast a clout till May is out," and that was had a lot of merit as well. But we are going to have the return of bad weather. And there is also concern now because we, with Sarah Everard's disappearance and murder, and with the terrible events surrounding it, particularly with the policeman charged with her death, is that two schoolgirls, 13 and 14, have disappeared in Kent. So obviously a great deal of concern there. Once again, let's see, yes, it's 7:53. So I started off with the headline: is this nonsense about AstraZeneca jab is just like, in my opinion, the scientists, whom we don't always believe, say that there is no evidence whatsoever that blood clots are associated with the jab. Matt Hancock, who we don't always believe, says we're not associated. The blood clots aren't associated with the AstraZeneca jab. It's the European politicians who are saying it. And I am saying that there's no evidence, because I had the AstraZeneca jab. I had it, I don't know, perhaps 6 or 8 weeks ago now. And I've no evidence whatsoever that there is a problem at all. My main problem is that I haven't been able to get a drink, and I'm not a solitary drinker. I don't sit at home drinking very much. In fact, almost nothing at all, which is very sad for somebody who enjoys a bottle of wine and a loaf of bread. But there you are. That's the news this morning. And we really must see that some of these headline news are conflict, and we love conflict. But are they? How do they have a great impact on our lives? Well, the row with the palace, I think, does, and the sooner that that's resolved. The reason that I think it does is because we are a constitutional monarchy, and it casts doubt on the family of the head of state. And our head of state is quite remarkable, probably the finest head of state anywhere in the world. And for that matter, a constitutional monarchy is probably the best form of government. The Greeks said so, and all down the ages until we actually arrived at a constitutional monarchy, which we did by accident, and we still haven't got a properly written constitution, even though various politicians tried to tamper with that. Our form of constitutional monarchy is an excellent way to be governed, and I'm glad that we have it. The only thing that raised its head yesterday in the news was that some politicians, particularly cabinet ministers and Priti Patel, are tampering with the law. They want to introduce a law about people meeting and protests and so on and so forth. Okay, they've had a bad time. They've had a bad time, but then you elect your government to handle those sort of things. Is just because they've had a bad time doesn't mean to say that you've got to change the form of government, the law, to stop us doing what's irritating them. You learn to handle it. Reform the police, for one thing, and reform your own attitudes towards people who disagree with you. Because there are a lot of politicians who simply get angry if their ideas and views are challenged. So that legislation should be fought. And there are a number of people that have got online, what do they call surveys? Online surveys. They can send to Parliament and say, "Hey, don't be silly enough to let this go through." And quite right too, because we do value our freedoms. And believe me, sometimes, well, yeah, I am a loudmouth. I don't mind saying so. And I approve of people like Piers Morgan. And I've approved of people like George Gale. Most people have forgotten George Gale, but George Gale, next to me, was the first person to be on British radio, on UK radio, way back in the 70s, when suddenly we were broke free from the BBC, to hold an open line show in which he called the shots. I did the same in Birmingham. Oh, I really got my fingers burned. The man they love to hate, they actually billed me as. There's some people that still say that. But freedom of speech is very, very precious to us, and so it should be. Oh, 7:58. Who the hell are you listening to? Who are you watching? For those people who have never tuned in before. Well, there is nobody tuned in, at least obviously there's nobody that's tapped into to take a little chat this morning. But this is seen throughout the day. So who are we? Let's take a look. Well, that's who we are, and that's where we are. And if you are not familiar with Lewis, it is a beautiful little town, a wonderful little town. It's had the spirit kicked out of it. It's the soul has gone for the moment, and we're trying to put it back. You can see this program is called, apart from Break an Egg, is Shout It Loud. Lewis is great, and Lewis is great. And when I came here 30 years ago, it was bubbling, and it's bubbled ever since until about 6 months or so ago, when it was almost as if the spirit had been kicked out of it. Well, we've got to get that spirit back. It does some wonderful things. First of all, historically, its contribution has been enormous. The Battle of Lewis in 1264, where it is given by most historians credit for the first spark of democracy, when Simon de Montfort led the barons against the king and defeated him. And they, as a result, were given some seats in Parliament on an elected basis. And not the Parliament that we know. No, it wasn't. But it was the first spark. But then along came Tom Paine, who, when he finished with us, he raced off to the Americas and he decided that he would help the revolutionaries there. And he is given credit for the fact that the War of Independence and that American independence was gained because of Tom Paine. When Tom Paine was here, he lived in the house at the top of the town opposite St. Michael's Church. And of course, the moment I wanted to say the name, it went out of my mind because that's how old I am, and it does happen to you once in a while. And in seconds, I will remember it. But he lived here in Lewis and was a customs and excise officer. And at that particular time, in the 1700s, there was a gang that came out of Hawkhurst in Kent called they called it the Hawkhurst Gang, and they ran free. They slaughtered and mob rule and virtually governed East Sussex through fear and violence. And they were basically smugglers. And Tom Paine and his other excise officers, that's what they were up against. There is no exact evidence that Tom Paine ever faced down any of the Hawkhurst gang. But in Robertsbridge, there was a fight between the smugglers and the army, and they actually the smugglers won. So you can see how powerful they were in those days. So law and order was not something that we accepted. But anyway, dear old Tom that's under the circumstances under which he was working here. He married the boss's daughter, and they fell out very quickly. he was married in St. Michael's Church, right on the High Street. They fell out very quickly, and then Tom buggered off to the Americas. And he is credited by Bill Bryson as giving the term the United States to America. Of course, there were only 13 in those days, but nonetheless, he is credited with giving them that name. And then also, he is said to have waved his hand as he went past Parliament, which still was not representative of the people in the late 1700s, early 1800s, and said there should be a House of Commons. Well, what have we got today? A House of Commons. Pretty common, I have to say, but nonetheless, that was our Tom. That was Tom Paine, and that was the spirit. And they say that when you come to Lewis to live, if you breathe in, if you inhale, then what you do is you take in some of that rebellious spirit, and you get cracking, and you become absolutely awkward and difficult, but you come out with great ideas. And I hope that because there are some very, very feisty people. Here we have bonfire societies, and although sometimes they can get a bit above themselves, although I'll be have my throat slit for that. But they are very inventive and they're very spirited, and the things that they do and the inventive things that they do for November the 5th is quite remarkable, which culminates in the biggest bonfire celebration anywhere in the world on November the 5th. By far the biggest. It's huge. In one year that I was here, bonfire fell on a Saturday. It was beautiful weather in the evening, and the count was that a town of 17,000 swelled to 100,000 that night. And normally, the police will give out the figure of it swells to 80,000. So you can see just how important it becomes, and how wonderful it is, what a spectacle it is. And that's the sort of feisty spirit that I like, and that it embraces Lewis. It's not the only group. We have wonderful groups, theatre groups, musical groups. There are more musicians in Lewis than you can shake a hat at. Shake a stick at, I think it is. It's a terrific society. Oh, it's 8:06. I haven't done much at all this morning. But perhaps you noticed a difference in my step. No, you haven't, because I haven't walked. But in my demeanour this morning, and it does look as if at long last we have got some support from the establishment, which means that whereas yesterday morning we were worried that in its present form anyway, Mirador television may not have gone on, is today it is going to go. And we are able, I'm happy to say, to be with you, and will continue to be with you. And immediately we started to put in plans into place so that by the beginning of April, you will get the varied programming that you've been used to. Seeing me first thing in the morning, burbling on about various things, is you can take 5 minutes of that at the very most. And I'm on for an hour. But we will have a whole variety of things, and we're working on that. And not only that, but there are a lot of people in the town that get involved. I have identified and actually had a little bit to do with the development, and I'm sorry that they, for various reasons, both motherhood, career, other career, and lockdown, that they're lost to television at the moment. But there are three ladies. They won't mind me saying, well, two of them are middle age, one's quite young. And I'm going to name them because one is Annie Verrill, who you see introducing this program in the morning, and another is Lalada Richardson, who does magnificent work in the community, particularly with the elderly, and then there was Sophie Harris, who was one of the originals for Mirador television, and I think Sophie wasn't more than 19 when she started, and had a great presence in front of a camera. Now, those three ladies are very, very talented. Mainstream television hasn't found them because it's not looking for that sort of talent, which is a pity. Because, like everything else, you want a career in mainstream television and so on. I've been there, done that, so I know I'm once again talking from the inside. Is you got to be part of a certain clique and do certain things. There's nobody. They're not like football teams. They don't have talent scouts to go out and take a look. As a consequence, a lot of talent is missed. But that Lewis should be able to, in the period of about 2 or 3 years, turn up 3 first-class talents, wonderful people in front of the camera. The camera loves them. Is quite remarkable for a small town, and there are more than that. But right along the East Sussex coast I'm looking at Jane Watkins, I think, who is just a funny lady, and we hope that she will be seen again. What we've done is we've highlighted to ourselves the programs that we're working, and we've invited those people who are involved in it to perhaps take a look and see whether they want to be involved again. We have warned everybody, and let me put this out too as a warning for young people coming out of university with a degree in media, whether it's a technical, video editing, or in front of camera. Let me warn you that this industry, as my accountant says, it's a flaky industry. You'll never ever feel secure. If you want a 9-to-5 job and go home and get a pension, this isn't the one. You can make a lot of money in television, yes, you can. But also there are a lot of people who don't make very much and actually end up by being not fired as such, but disappearing. In the late 1990s, and the situations got worse, not better. Late 1990s, when I was working at Reuters, a survey was taken of those people who were new into the television industry, those people who actually got into the industry. And there are huge numbers of people who never, ever get past knocking on the door. Never mind they've got a degree. Huge numbers. because the industry is looking for experience, and it's the old thing: how do you get experience without a job, and how do you get a job without experience? It's not a closed shop, but it's not very easy to get into. But the survey showed that of the people who actually got through the front door, 80%, 80% left within 2 years, and a large proportion of that within 1 year. Because while it looks glamorous from the outside, it's bloody hard work on the inside. Believe me, it is hard work. I personally find it very, very satisfying. But a lot of people find that what they expected, or what they've been taught they should expect, what they were being led to believe television and radio is all about, isn't at all. And one of the first pitfalls is that people coming through the front door waving a degree. What do? Go and make the coffee. But I've got a degree. Go and make the coffee. And they're immediately disillusioned with the industry. But there are people like me who insist that you learn. You've got to be good. At one time, it was said that you needed to work almost as an apprentice for 5 years before you were left alone to go out and get stories or handle the newsroom on your own. I think that's probably a bit of an exaggeration, but nonetheless, it just shows that you had to learn your trade. So this industry isn't particularly. It's not a very easy industry to be in. Why did I start telling you that? I don't know. Oh, I know, because Mirador is now getting some support. Some of the people that were working with us, well, some of the people who did work with us won't come back. They will never come back, and that's partly me because I'm still hard nosed. I'm a sort of a Lou Grant. In fact, when I was in Kosovo, I was I was given the name Lou Grant. Lou Grant was the hard nosed news editor in Mary Tyler Moore Show. Many of you may not have seen the Mary Tyler Moore Show, but nonetheless, that's going back into the 50s and the 60s. But I'm a Lou Grant. I don't. I expect perfection from everybody from day one. So I'm not easy to work with or for. But others, it's not what they think. They've got their own ideas about what it is, and when it's not that, they get disappointed and disillusioned. And that's true of the entire industry. So if you want to go into broadcasting, and our door is open. You can come and take a little apprenticeship with us, and if you're good enough, you can come and take a job with us. We'll look at everybody, but you've got to be prepared for it is a difficult industry. And we say to people, look, we're just going to put you on a 3-month what is it called? Not apprenticeship, but you have 3 months in which to decide whether you like it and whether you're any good at it, so on and so forth. Simply because people say, "Oh, I always want to be in television," and so on and so forth. And when they find out what it's like, is they want to leave, and so the door is open. But if you want to be in television, by all means, drop me a line personally, hayeskeith@hotmail.com. Only too happy to take a look and talk to you, because as of April, we will be again expanding. We've still got a few problems in terms of settling some debts, which were accrued during lockdown, but we will be back on track pretty soon, 8/14. It is on the 17th of the 3rd, the 17th of March, today, 2021, and let's hope it's an auspicious day. The sun is shining at the moment. The clouds are gathering a little bit, but it's going to be scattered cloud throughout the day, and we should be okay. And in local news, one of the things we didn't talk about yesterday, even though we were talking about transport, is that a new link road is going to be built to New Haven Port. I always felt very sorry that they closed the station there, because once again, I've written some stories about New Haven. And partly because New Haven was, because my wife has now departed, but she was Canadian, and she had some of her family depart from New Haven to Normandy during the Second World War. And in New Haven, they have not forgotten. There's a little park on the edge of the town with the Canadian flag and a memorial. And there is a little ceremony each year. So it was her favorite town. And I've always felt that it's a dingy little town. It's not attractive at all. You wouldn't go down there for a picnic. but the station at the port always had romance because all sorts of important people went through. And at one time, there was a hotel, which I understand was destroyed in the 1960s, that had famous people staying at it. And the man who, I don't know his name, but the man who broke the bank at Monte Carlo, I know it was Noel Coward or somebody who wrote a song about it. The man who broke the bank at Monte Carlo, he used to stay there and have lavish parties. And sometimes when he was flush, when he'd had a good gambling session, those parties were huge. And sometimes he had to sit in the bar with one gin and tonic because the cards had not been kind to him. But anyway, I mean, that's the sort of romance that we have here. And is evoked by things which we're busy knocking down. I just put something up this morning on my personal Facebook page because in the middle of the night, I have epiphanies. And I'd read I subscribe to Vancouver. What do they call it? A page just about Vancouver, and I saw reference to the fact that they knocked down the old city hall, and I thought, oh no, because I was a journalist in that city hall, and then I looked, and it was the one in 1956, and I put up a little thing with the picture of our priory here, the priory, which was built in 10. Well, the building started in 1068, very close to the conquest. It started in 1068, and even though Henry VIII, the Vandal, he pulled it down, most of it down, is the inside walls are still there, and the arches, and one can imagine what it was like because it was a magnificent priory and dominated the town. That has lasted 1,000 years or more. And yet what we do is we knock things down or we don't keep them, when in fact they've got the same mystery as that priory has. And oh boy, has that priory got mystery. I was actually speaking to somebody the other night who takes his dog for a walk around there. I don't have a dog, but I sometimes go down there and broadcast from it. But I said, I sometimes feel that the monks are there and that they're talking to me. And he said, I don't feel exactly the same. He said, the fact that it was so important and so historical, and that the monks went through pain and suffering, and they were very devoted monks, is that it exudes from the building. And it's that sort of thing. Anyway, I'm really talking about the railway station at New Haven. I hope that somebody, perhaps even Southern Rail, will say this is a historic station, and it is a historic station. There's some evidence that it may have had the murderer, Nanny's murderer, go through there on his way to the ferry. I'm talking about Lord Lucan. It's one of those mornings where names are escaping me. I'm starting to talk about people, and I have to catch up with the name. And it's strange, isn't it? I was just talking about Tom Paine, and I forgot where he lived in Lewes. It's Bull House, of course, and Bull House is very well preserved. And I think that it's either a 13th or 14th century house, and a very attractive building. And part of the rebellious nature of people in Lewes comes from there. I'm rambling a bit, but that's okay. 8:19. We had better just do a little bit of sales work here, I think. Yeah.
When you've missed the train, don't despair. Have a nice cup of coffee. And perhaps a mince pie. At the Runaway on Lewes Station. After that, why worry about the next train? The Runaway on Lewes Station. Relaxation beyond compare. when you see me with an umbrella, it's raining.
Well, that's the weather for you. And not a bad outlook, but I should warn you that the forecasts are for a very chilly time leading up to Easter, which is what, in about 2 weeks' time, and that we could get snow across the country during that time. So quite often what happens is we have a false dawn, as it were. We have a nice sunny period and everybody gets used to spring, and then wham, bam, down it comes and freezes the tickles off us. So really don't be too happy yet that if we get locked down away and we can sit outside the pubs, is that even though 6 of us can, is we might have to wear our woolies and our jumpers just to have a drink. But then in glorious June, it should be glorious. We can go back into the pubs again. What restrictions will be on, I don't think has been made clear yet. Hopefully, we'll be able to belly up to the bar. That's really, during lockdown, having to sit at a table arm's length from everybody, even if you did see somebody, it's yelling across the room. Not at all pleasant. Not at all pleasant. So let's hope that the pub industry gets back in June in full swing, and let's hope also that the weather does too. It's a pity that we've got a nice bit here, and we're going to get chilly. Need the hot water bottle or a good partner or something of the sort. Right, in the news this morning, the unfortunate thing is that the AstraZeneca jab row bubbles on. And it's always the way that if you say something long and loud enough, people begin to believe it. And that's how the politicians in the European Union operate. So they've been saying that now, oh gosh, we're going to halt AstraZeneca because it's associated with blood clots. Rubbish. The scientific community say it's rubbish, and they've been testing ever since the first jabs were given. And I was given one of the first AstraZeneca jabs, and much to the chagrin of a lot of people, I'm still here. I think they wouldn't have wished me to go that way, but it's anything to shut my mouth, the mouth that roars. And I'm sorry that they've shut Piers Morgan's mouth. Hopefully, somebody will crop up in his place. But we need loud mouths. We need people who will yell the odds, only just to start debate. And the thing about people like Morgan and myself is we don't care if it turns out we're wrong. If what we do is we raise an issue that nobody will raise, and we get you to talk about it, and we get a debate. So eventually what we do is we get a consensus opinion. So much the better. But what's happening with AstraZeneca is immoral, in my view, because it means that there are people in continental Europe, who aren't getting the jab when they should get it. And I hope that if there are deaths, that they will be on the conscience of those politicians, but they won't be. Yeah, that's the trouble with politicians, particularly at the very highest level. They have no conscience. They live in a bubble and they do what they decide is right, whether that's good for their constituents or not. Quite beside the point. Quite beside the point. Anyway, so that's one, and the other, of course, is the royal family. That row carries on, and I just wish that would end, because I personally, and I say I personally, it's only my opinion, believe that it's an attack on the British Constitution, which is impossible because we don't have a written constitution. We have a partially written constitution. We are a constitutional monarchy, which means that the head of state is the Queen or the King, if we have one, and it's a very important role in our governmental makeup. And that is, to me, this distasteful row that's going on is very much an attack on our constitution, on the way that we're governed, and those people that govern us. Oh, a lot of people say royalists, we should have the Queen and so on. But in fact, she's probably the most knowledgeable and, if not the best, amongst the best rulers anywhere in the world. And the funny thing is you don't know what you've lost until you've not got it. Those people who yell republicanism haven't lived under a republic. They've only lived under one. I've lived under a couple. See how you like it. Yeah, because one day you're believing this, and the next day you're believing that, with no continuity at all. And the other thing is, of course, even though I can't say that our own form of government stops any sort of what should we say, money passed around when it shouldn't be, pockets stuffed, but we don't have the corruption that often countries that are republicans and have a republic and have a president do have. So think twice before you fight it. But that's my reason for getting upset at that particular headline and that particular row. It's 8:29. I've taught myself out. I'm terribly sorry. Oh dear, 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 dear. Okay, thank you for being with me. But Mirador is on the way back. We are now plotting and planning so that we can actually launch. It won't be April the 1st. Not a good day anyway. I think it's April the 3rd. It's a Monday. Monday, April the 3rd. We are now beginning to plot and plan our programs to try and bring you back a full set of programs, rather than the skeleton that you've had with myself and occasionally Paul Fowl with me, holding the fort until such time as we could get back together. Looks as if we're going to make it, hopefully. I'm sure you'll be pleased with that, because it's less of me and more of the good stuff that Mirador can provide. So until tomorrow, when just for the rest of the week, it'll have to be me. Mainly it was me. Oh no, I mustn't start singing to you. Not at this time of the morning. We'll say goodbye, shall we? Yeah, this is who we are and where we are. Do join us. MiradorTelevision.com or Mirador Television Lewis on the Facebook pages, or Mirador Television on YouTube. You'll find us there. And soon we will be back on your phone, and soon we'll be back on your smart TV. So for the moment, till bit.